You wake up, but it is not a gentle, gradual awakening. It is a sudden, sharp intake of breath, a violent physical reaction to the phantom weight pressing down on your chest, suffocating you in the dark. The sheets tangling your legs are pure Egyptian cotton, a thread count so high it feels like heavy liquid against your skin, but you are sweating cold, bitter drops of pure adrenaline. Your hand immediately darts instinctively under the goose-down pillow. Your fingers wrap tightly around the cold, checkered grip of the loaded Beretta 92 FS. Only then, feeling the heavy steel, do you allow your racing heart to slow down and your eyes to adjust to the dim morning light filtering through the heavy, soundproof velvet curtains. The massive master bedroom is dead silent, save for the rhythmic, almost mocking ticking of the antique mahogany grandfather clock in the hallway. You are alive. For another 24 hours, you have managed to stay alive. You sit up slowly on the edge of the sprawling bed, the expensive mattress sighing softly under your weight. The imported Carrara marble floor is freezing against your bare feet, sending a chill straight up your spine. Yesterday morning, this exact room, this exact bed, belonged to Don Roberto. Yesterday, Don Roberto took a sip of his favorite imported sambuca after dinner, clutched his chest in sudden agony, and died with his eyes wide open, choking in a pool of his own vomit while staring at the Renaissance ceiling frescoes he had paid €500,000 to restore. Today, the silk sheets have been changed. Today, the sprawling, heavily fortified estate is yours. Today, and you are the undisputed boss of the most feared and deeply entrenched syndicate in southern Italy. But as you look at your tired reflection in the gilded floor-to-ceiling mirror across the room, you do not see a conquering king. You see a dead man on a temporary, highly stressful leave of absence. The master tailor arrives precisely at 9 in the morning, escorted by 2 of your armed guards. He is a small, perpetually nervous man from the old quarters of Naples who has been measuring the men in this syndicate for over 4 decades. He knows exactly how to cut a bespoke jacket to perfectly hide the unnatural bulge of a shoulder holster while maintaining the elegant, razor-sharp silhouette expected of a man of your new elevated stature. As he steps behind you and wraps the yellow measuring tape around your neck to check the collar size, you feel an involuntary, violent twitch in your jaw. Your muscles lock up. It feels significantly less like a fitting for a luxury suit and much more like a sizing for a hangman's noose. You notice he doesn't look you in the eye. In fact, no one looks you in the eye anymore. That is the very first terrifying thing you notice about absolute power. The sudden, chilling evaporation of genuine human connection. When you were a captain, a soldier working the streets, the men joked with you. They complained bitterly about their wives. They argued passionately about football matches. They shared a raw, unfiltered, and honest reality with you. Now, overnight, you are surrounded by a suffocating, impenetrable bubble of absolute deference. Every single word spoken to you by anyone is carefully calculated, heavily filtered through thick layers of fear, blind ambition, and hidden deceit. They call you Don. They kiss your cheek with soft lips. They lower their heads in deep respect. But behind their subservient, downcast eyes, you can almost hear the cold, metallic gears turning in their heads. They are actively calculating your weaknesses. They are wondering exactly how long your reign will last before they can make a move. Let me tell you about the crushing reality of the throne you bled to sit on. The cinematic movies and television shows sold you a glamorous, romanticized lie of honorable men, of unyielding loyalty sworn in blood, of grand, operatic violence that means something. The actual truth of your daily life is far more sterile, corporate, and infinitely more exhausting. The modern Italian mob does not run on leaving horse heads in beds or conducting dramatic shootouts in the middle of crowded public squares. Public violence is terrible for business. Violence brings the heavy militarized presence of the Carabinieri, the relentless audits of the Guardia di Finanza, and the obsessive, unblinking gaze of the anti-mafia magistrates who want to build their political careers on your downfall. No, your modern empire runs silently on massive Excel spreadsheets, labyrinthine offshore shell companies in tax havens, and entirely untraceable cryptocurrency wallets tumbling through the dark web. You aren't a romantic godfather, you are the hyper-stressed CEO of a highly illegal, wildly volatile multinational corporation where the standard penalty for corporate bankruptcy or a bad quarter is a hollow-point bullet to the back of the head. Your mornings are no longer spent in the gritty backrooms of social clubs plotting grand, bloody vendettas against rival families. Instead, they are spent in impeccably sterile, glass-walled boardrooms in the financial districts of Milan, sitting across a large mahogany table from men in perfectly tailored Brioni suits who hold advanced economic degrees from the London School of Economics. You sit there in silence and listen to smooth-talking corporate lawyers drone on for hours about corporate restructuring, aggressive real estate acquisitions in the upscale neighborhoods of London, and highly lucrative, completely rigged waste management contracts in the Campania region. You have to learn exactly how dirty cash, earned through the miserable sweat, tears, and blood of street-level extortion and international narcotics trafficking, is washed perfectly clean through a dizzying labyrinth of phantom construction firms. You must memorize the complex mechanics of it. A fake company you own quietly invoices a legitimate front business you control for heavy construction materials that were never actually delivered. The front company pays the massive invoice with the dirty street cash, instantly transforming it into legitimate, traceable revenue, appropriately taxed and beautifully sanitized, ready to be openly invested in luxury boutique hotels on the Amalfi Coast. You nod solemnly, you sign the endless stacks of legal papers, but deep down, you understand nothing but the final bottom line on the page. You are constantly surrounded by educated men who are much smarter than you, men who do not need to carry illegal firearms because they carry leather briefcases that hold the power to destroy your entire criminal empire with a single misplaced decimal point or a leaked document. And you know with absolute, terrifying certainty that these educated, wealthy men secretly despise you. They gladly take your illicit money, they wash it for a heavy percentage, but to them, you are nothing more than a violent, uneducated street peasant who simply happened to violently climb to the top of a pile of rotting corpses. The absolute power you thought you were fighting for is nothing but a glittering illusion. The higher you aggressively climb up the ladder, the less actual control you realize you have over your own life. When you were a mere soldier on the pavement, your problems were immediate, tangible, and physical. A rival dealer stepping onto your lucrative street corner. A heavy gambling debt that desperately needed to be collected by force. You could solve those problems with your fists or a gun. Now, as the boss, your problems are entirely abstract, deeply systemic, and terrifyingly omnipresent. You are tasked with managing a fragile, chaotic economy of pure, unadulterated human greed. Your capos, the ruthless heads of the various powerful factions operating under your wide umbrella, are not your loyal friends. They are essentially violent, autonomous warlords who are only temporarily united under your specific banner because it is currently financially profitable for them to do so. The exact moment the quarterly profits take a dip, or the very second you show even a microscopic fraction of weakness or hesitation, they will happily tear you apart like a pack of starving, rabid dogs. You are holding the leash, yes, but the massive, aggressive dogs are constantly pulling in a dozen different conflicting directions. This is the exact moment when the invisible trap finally springs violently shut around you. This is when the creeping paranoia entirely stops being a fleeting feeling and permanently becomes your baseline state of human existence. It begins very subtly, in small, almost unnoticeable ways. You completely stop taking sugar in your morning espresso because Don Roberto was poisoned at his own dining table, and the official police toxicology report is still locked away in a secure evidence vault that even your best lawyers cannot access. Ritsu, you abruptly fire the sweet, elderly cook who has faithfully worked for your family for over 20 years, simply because she lingered a fraction of a second too long near your plate while serving the pasta. You immediately hire a dedicated food taster, a young, desperately poor and hungry kid from the brutal slums of Scampia. You sit silently at the head of the long dining table and watch him eat your expensive meals, obsessively scanning his young face for the slightest muscular twitch, the tiniest sign of physical distress or stomach pain, before you finally allow yourself to take a small bite. Even then, the most expensive truffles and imported meats always taste exactly like dry ash in your mouth. Your beautiful home, the sprawling multi-million-euro villa with its high stone walls, state-of-the-art thermal security cameras, and heavily armed guards patrolling the perimeter, no longer feels like a luxurious sanctuary. It feels exactly like a maximum security prison where you play the cruel role of both the paranoid warden and the sole, isolated inmate. You genuinely trust absolutely no one. You cannot trust your private driver, the man who knows every single one of your daily routes and vulnerable transit points. You cannot trust your massive, intimidating bodyguards, the men who constantly stand directly behind you with fully loaded automatic weapons and a clear view of the back of your skull. You cannot even bring yourself to trust your own wife. When she lies peacefully next to you in the pitch-black bedroom, her breathing soft, slow, and rhythmic, your mind races, wondering if she has secretly spoken to Silvio, your ambitious, calculating underboss. Silvio, the man who smiled just a little too widely and clapped a little too loudly at your private coronation. Silvio, who currently controls the lucrative shipping ports and has been quietly holding back 10% of the transit fees, testing your boundaries. Does she know about his secret moves? Is she simply pretending to be asleep, waiting for you to finally close your eyes so she can quietly unlock the heavy bedroom door for the assassins? You spend agonizing hours lying wide awake, staring blankly at the dark ceiling, listening intensely to every single creak of the old floorboards, hopelessly interpreting every passing shadow outside the window as a heavily armed hit squad. The deep psychological isolation is an actual physical weight, constantly crushing the air out of your lungs. You absolutely cannot confide your terrifying fears to anyone. In this brutal ecosystem, to speak openly of your internal fears is to blatantly show weakness, and displaying weakness is an open, engraved invitation to a violent coup. You are forced to constantly project an impenetrable aura of absolute, terrifying omniscience and control. You must be the omnipotent, untouchable Don at all times. But deep inside that tailored suit, you are nothing but a deeply frightened, exhausted animal violently backed into a dark corner with nowhere left to run. The deafening silence of the criminal underworld suddenly shatters. A massive, highly coordinated shipment of pure cocaine is brutally intercepted at the commercial port of Gioia Toro. 2 full tons of product, brilliantly hidden inside hollowed-out imported marble slabs. The customs authorities didn't search randomly. They walked in and knew exactly which specific containers to open and check. The crushing realization hits you right in the chest like a physical blow from a heavyweight fighter. There is a high-level rat. Someone sitting directly inside your trusted inner circle is actively talking to the anti-mafia directorate. The ambient air in your lavish office instantly turns to freezing ice. The familiar faces of your most trusted, high-ranking lieutenants rapidly flash through your highly stressed mind. Could it be Marco, your oldest childhood friend, the very man who bravely took a police bullet for you during a botched job a decade ago? Was it him? He recently purchased a massive, beautiful villa in the hills of Tuscany that he absolutely shouldn't be able to afford on his current percentage. Or was it Silvio? Is Silvio actively trying to orchestrate your rapid downfall by strategically starving your major revenue streams and forcing a rebellion among the men? You quietly summon Marco to a secure safe house. It is a dilapidated, abandoned farmhouse sitting quietly on the rural outskirts of Naples, completely stripped of all modern technology and wiring to thoroughly prevent any police wiretaps. The tense drive out there is psychological agony. You vividly remember happily playing football with him in the dirty, dusty streets of your youth. You remember his sweet mother feeding you warm meals when your own mother was too drunk to care if you lived or died. But the cold, mechanical rules of this dark world leave absolutely zero room for human sentimentality. When Marco confidently walks into the dim, dust-filled room, his smile is completely genuine, open, and warm. "Boss," he says proudly, stepping forward with his arms open to embrace you. You remain frozen. You do not return the embrace. You stare intensely into his eyes. You are desperately looking for the subtle flicker of deep guilt, the barely noticeable physical tension of a terrified man wearing a hidden police microphone taped to his chest. You begin to interrogate him. You carefully weave a complex web of seemingly innocent, casual questions, aggressively probing his recent personal finances, his daily movements, and his private conversations with associates. He answers every question easily and naturally, but in your current state of extreme, sleep-deprived hyperparanoia, every easy, smooth answer looks exactly like a carefully rehearsed, heavily coached lie. Every minor hesitation to remember a detail is interpreted as a direct confession of treason. The brutal logic of the criminal underworld rigidly demands absolute certainty. But the underworld inherently only provides murky shadows, rumors, and lies. You have absolutely zero concrete proof. You only have a sick gut feeling completely corrupted by chronic sleep deprivation, immense stress, and constant vibrating terror. But the unfeeling machinery of the syndicate violently demands blood to maintain order. A boss who hesitates to kill is a dead boss walking. You absolutely cannot afford the luxury of a fair trial. You cannot afford the massive, fatal risk of being wrong in the direction of mercy. You harden your heart, look away, and give a tiny, almost imperceptible nod to the 2 massive men standing quietly in the dark shadows directly behind Marco. The sudden sound of the metal garrote wire tightening is a wet, sickening, high-pitched zip. Marco's friendly eyes instantly widen in absolute, uncomprehending, primal horror. He looks directly at you, not with burning anger or hatred, but with profound, heartbreaking, desperate confusion. He doesn't even try to fight the wire biting into his throat. He just reaches out a shaking hand toward you as if begging you to explain why this terrible joke is happening. You coldly turn your back to him. You force yourself to listen to the desperate, violent thrashing, the choking, wet, gurgling sounds of a human life being rapidly extinguished on a dirty, blood-stained concrete floor. When the room finally falls dead silent, and you walk out into the cool, refreshing night air, fully knowing you are leaving a massive, irreplaceable piece of your own rotting soul in that dark room, you just murdered your brother. And the absolute worst part? The terrifying, mind-destroying reality that will haunt you forever? You will literally never know for certain if he was actually the rat. The dark days blur together into a continuous, suffocating, endless loop of deep suspicion, ordering violent preemptive strikes, and sitting through mind-numbing, endless financial meetings with soulless accountants. You rigorously wash the invisible blood off your trembling hands, put on the incredibly expensive tailored suit, and sit in the glass boardroom, desperately pretending you are a legitimate, brilliant businessman. You ride in the armored car back to the fortified stone fortress, unlock the heavy steel-reinforced doors, and sit entirely alone in the dark, desperately pretending you are safe from the monsters you created. The hundreds of millions of euros secretly hidden in encrypted servers across the globe mean absolutely nothing to you now. You cannot safely spend it. You cannot publicly enjoy it. You are a miserable, highly paid prisoner of your own making. You slowly walk past the massive gilded mirror in the long hallway and stop dead in your tracks. The exhausted, broken man looking back at you is completely unrecognizable. The youthful, dangerous arrogance, the burning, ambitious fire that aggressively propelled you to the very top of the mountain is entirely extinguished. Your face is deeply lined, sickly gray. Completely hollowed out by chronic stress and the screaming ghosts of the countless men you ruthlessly ordered into the cold earth. Your eyes are completely dead, darting nervously and constantly at the dark periphery of the reflection, waiting for the attack. You finally realize the ultimate, cynical, soul-crushing truth of the brutal system you bled and killed to conquer. You did not inherit a glorious empire. You inherited a fatal, terminal disease. The heavy, ornate seat of the boss is not a grand throne of absolute power. It is a bloody altar of human sacrifice. The massive, grinding machinery of the mob does not serve you. You serve it. It constantly demands a massive daily intake of extreme violence, crippling paranoia, and endless betrayal just to keep the bloody gears turning and the illicit money flowing upward. You are nothing but the current, highly disposable biological component processing that dark input. And as you slowly pour yourself a stiff glass of imported sambuca, staring blankly at the exact spot on the expensive Persian rug where Don Roberto choked and took his very last breath, you finally, truly understand exactly why he looked so incredibly relieved when his stressed heart finally stopped beating. The fatal poison wasn't actually hidden in his drink. The poison is the heavy chair. The poison is the entire life. You raise the trembling glass to your lips. You genuinely wonder if tonight is the exact night your own ambitious underboss finally decides he's entirely ready for a private fitting with the master tailor. You drink the burning liquid, secretly hoping that it is your time, while remaining absolutely terrified that it isn't. That's all for today. The story you just heard is fiction, but the reality of men climbing to the top of organized crime syndicates only to find a psychological prison happens every day. If this story made you think, leave a comment saying what your biggest takeaway was. Subscribe so you don't miss the next stories from the Underworld. Until next time.